you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs!
And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro, the Sick Podcast on this Friday, January 3rd, and the game just ended minutes ago, and the Montreal Canadiens, who in their last 3 games went to Florida and won. The night after that, or the day after that, they went to Tampa and won. A couple of days after that, they went to Vegas and won. So when they beat Florida, they beat a top 7 team. When they beat Tampa, they beat a top 15 team. And when they beat Vegas, they beat statistically the best team in the National Hockey League, who had won 6 straight games. They had the best win percentage in the National Hockey League. A couple of days after that, the Montreal Canadiens were in Chicago to visit the Chicago Blackhawks, statistically the worst team in the National Hockey League. 32 out of 32. Going into the game, they had won just 12 of 38 games. Their win percentage was only .342. And what did the Montreal Canadiens do? Did they build on the momentum that was the 3 straight wins? No. They laid an egg in Chicago. Well, not that they laid an egg, because they had like 40 shots on goal. So they definitely came to play, but they were indisciplined. They couldn't execute as much as they should have. They made some costly mistakes, and the Chicago Blackhawks made them pay. So what seemed like a big win in Vegas almost seems like nothing now, because it was canceled out with a loss in Chicago. The Canadiens have an opportunity to redeem themselves tomorrow night, playing their second game in 24 hours. They're going to play it in Colorado versus a top 10 team. They'll play it in altitude. If they can win that one, well, then they've bounced back. If they don't win that one, well, then it's almost like the last 2 wins end up being canceled out. It is the Sick Podcast, and it's brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group. Pierre McGuire is coming up to join me on this Habs post-game show of the Sick Podcast with me, Marinaro. The Sick Podcast is brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group, a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different. Also brought to you in part by Bittt Tibi. They launched their new Ultra Lager, refreshing, thirst-quenching beer, perfect for chilly winter days. Only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, 4% ABV per can, available in a pack of 6 and 12 in grocery stores all around the province of Quebec. It's ultra light and ultra refreshing. We'll get to the rest of our sponsors in just a minute, but without further ado, it's time for the McGuire Report.
The McGuire Report. Presented by Vago Italian.
And the McGuire Report is presented by Restaurant Vago, open 23 years. Not many restaurants are open that long. You talk about longevity. Well, when you have that kind of longevity, it's because price, product, service, it all comes together. Private dining rooms for any occasion, birthday engagements, corporate meetings, plenty of free parking after 6, open Monday to Saturday evenings and lunch Tuesday to Friday. Fresh quality ingredients, old world Italian classics, new Italian. Come see Tommaso. He's the man in the front. Angelo will be the man in the kitchen. And they are the 2 most popular guys in Westmount. I can tell you that for a fact, pretty much. It's a favorite spot of Pierre McGuire's and the McGuire family. Pierre McGuire, how are you?
Excellent, Tony. Nice to visit with you.
Nice to visit with you as well, Pierre. You know, there was some bad news going into the game. The Canadiens let us know that Patrick Laine, under the weather, would not be playing, and nor would David Savard, who missed practice yesterday. So we're wondering if he was going to play, which means that Michael Pezzetta, after 27 or 28 games of being scratched, made his way into the lineup. Unfortunately for him, he had less than 6 minutes of ice time. And Jaden Struble got in, a nice opportunity for him to get back in the lineup. But The Montreal Canadiens lose when all is said and done to the Chicago Blackhawks. And Pierre, as much as the last 3 games were encouraging, and don't get me wrong, there were some positives tonight. But, man, if you're serious about being in the mix or you want to make a legitimate playoff push, you go into Chicago, you got to beat the Blackhawks because almost everyone does.
That's a fair point. They didn't start on time for sure. Getting 2 penalties on one play called by Chris Rooney obviously didn't help. You got Arbor Jacki and Jaden Struble both taking a penalty on the same play. That creates a 5-on-3 for Chicago. So they start to feel pretty good about themselves to start the game. And then eventually they score on the 5-on-4. Tony, it's one of those games where I heard somebody say it was a trap game. Yeah, it was a trap game for sure. I understand that terminology. But I also want to say that was not a Rembrandt by the Montreal Canadiens. Yeah, they had almost 40 shots on goal. Yes, they did some very good things. But the truth of the matter was that was not the team we've seen over the last little while.
No, not at all. Let's take a look at the lineup tonight, the Canadiens lineup that went into Chicago. All right, Suzuki had Slafkovsky on his right and Caulfield on his left. Doc with Newhook on his right and Pizzetta on his left. Dvorak with Gallagher and Anderson. Evans with Armia and Heineman. By the way, Pizzetta didn't play once again. He had 5 minutes and 49 seconds of ice time. So, pretty much everyone was playing except for Pizzetta there. Hudson with Matheson, Gooley with Carrier, Jacki with Struble, and Samuel Montembeault in goal for the Chicago Blackhawks. It was Bedard with Mahayev and Bertuzzi. It was Dickinson with Foligno and Hall. It was Nazar with Teravainen and Colton, Doc. It was Donato with Smith and Maroon. On defense, Kaiser and Jones, Vlasic and Crevier, Allen and Brody. And Soderblom was in goal. And Pierre, he did the job. He played well.
Oh, he did. So there were certain instances in the game where Arvid Soderblom was really good. They give him a lot of credit. But again, you talked about Michael Pizzetta. They were rotating a bunch of different left wingers up there.
Yeah.
It could be Anderson. It could be Heineman. They were disjointed. You could see this was a game where the team was disjointed. You talked about, Savard didn't play. Obviously, that's a pretty substantial loss for them on the back end. And Struble struggled. It was his first game back, and he struggled. And I think he'd be the first person to tell you that. And you could see, obviously, not having Patrick Laine in the power play, that's been their crutch for a while now, and all of a sudden the crutch is gone. They got to find a way to re-energize the power play if he's not going to be there.
Yeah, Pierre, they put Pizzetta, but like you said, I think we saw a little bit of everyone. I think we saw probably Gallagher a little bit more often than some of the other players. But look, Pierre, I probably shouldn't start here, but I understand that Michael Pizzetta is limited, and I understand that the Montreal Canadiens have arguably one of the best fourth lines in hockey. In terms of production, they are the best fourth line in hockey when they have Evans, Armia, and Heineman. But Michael Pizzetta has 3 shots and 3 hits in 5 minutes of 49 seconds of ice time. I get it. Marty's got to give confidence to his players, and if he gives confidence to Suzuki and Caulfield and Slafkovsky and Doc, it's probably more important than him giving confidence to Pizzetta. I think it's safe to say that Michael Pizzetta is not Marty St. Louis kind of player, and that's okay. He doesn't have to be, but man, I feel for the guy because he gives you everything he has, and there's not too much rope for him.
No, that's all fair. Honestly, if they really want to be a legitimate player for the playoffs, so to speak, and they're not going to play him, just put him on waivers. If you're playing 4.5 to 5 minutes a game, the team's not counting on you. Do you know what I mean? If you're not getting to that 10-minute mark almost every game as a player, the team's not counting on you. Bring somebody up that can actually contribute in that second line position. He's not a second line player. You know it. I know it. He knows it. As a player, he knows it.
Yeah.
So, it's unfortunate. I get it. The Canadiens haven't done a lot wrong, by the way. As a management group, as a coaching staff, they haven't done a lot of things wrong. I think if they could look in the mirror on this one, that'd be one thing I think they could do better, how they've treated Michael Pizzetta.
Yeah, Pierre, who I was disappointed with in terms of the performance tonight, and it's really the effort level really disappointed me. It's Slafkovsky, and I understand that he's young, but, part of being a young player is to be excited to play and to come play every night, and even if you're not producing, to show that, you're there and you're competing. and you're going to one day possibly be a force in the National Hockey League. I thought Slafkovsky's effort tonight was very bad.
You know, it's interesting you would bring that up.
Yeah.
There was a face-off play, I'm going to say in the third period, where Slafkovsky was lined up on the left side. Connor Bedard was lined up next to him as a right winger for Chicago, 2 number 1 overall picks. And you know what? I didn't see Slafkovsky push or do anything. I just saw him like laissez-faire. And in a game where you're trying, and you're right in front of your bench, in a game where you're trying to make an impact, you got to do a little bit more. And I didn't find he had a very good game. And I would say this, too, to be fair, Carrier's played very well for Montreal this year. Since he came over from Nashville, he did not have a very good night tonight, Tony.
It was tough tonight.
He had a tough night. So those were the 2 guys. I think you and I are probably on the same page, but I would tell you that Slafkovsky, if that's the best he's going to give you, he needs to go in a coach's office and get a little bit of a wake-up call. He really does.
Yeah, he was Carrier actually was looking for Jake Evans on a pass on one of the plays, right? And it's picked off. And all of a sudden it's a tic-tac-toe by the Chicago Blackhawks. And the player who ends up scoring the goal gets in behind Carrier and scores the goal. And that was Pat Maroon, if memory serves me well.
It was Maroon.
It was Maroon on that goal. And that's the goal that gave Chicago a 3-1 lead. And then Carrier goes back to the bench, and he knows that's on him, and he's not happy. And no, you're right. It was difficult for Carrier tonight. It really was.
Yeah, no, stuff like that's going to happen. We talked about it before this trip started. You go to Florida, you go to Tampa, you go to Vegas, then you come back. So it's a lot. It's time zone in the east, time zone in the west, time zone in the central. Now you're going out to the mountain time zone. This is a tough trip. It's not an easy trip. But they were playing with house money tonight, and I think they let their guard down to start the game. It's a bad way to start the game, the way the Canadiens started the game tonight.
Well, you take a look at how they lost, right? They lost to a goalie who came up big. There's no doubt about it. But in the end, I mean, who were the best players in this game? 2 of them were Maroon and Foligno, guys that have not that much left in the tank, especially when we're talking about Maroon. Foligno's got a little bit, but veterans who compete, who work hard, who want it, and they got beat by a team of a couple of guys leading the way who just really wanted it more than the Canadiens players wanted it tonight.
Yeah, and I'll tell you another guy that played really well for them, Wyatt Kaiser.
Yes.
Wyatt Kaiser's a kid out of Minnesota Duluth. He had a heck of a game for him. He played really, really well on defense, stabilizing the game, because Seth Jones still is nowhere near 100%. You can tell he's not the same player. He played with Kaiser, and I thought Kaiser played a good game. So you're right. The grinding guys, the meat and potatoes players for Chicago, they were better than the skill guys and the fancy guys from Montreal tonight. And that's one of those where you think, Tony, maybe we're not sure, but you think maybe a guy like Pizzetta stirs it up a little bit, gets after it. We saw Jack Guy get involved with Maroon, throwing a little bit of left-hand jackhammers into Maroon.
Yeah.
That was about the only pushback I saw tonight, Tony. I didn't see much more.
Trying to change the momentum of the hockey game. Mind you, he realizes that 2 minutes into the game, I mean, he takes a penalty. That's not the way you want to start. What a blown opportunity by Jaden Struble, who has become the 7th defenseman with Jack Guy really elevating in the last month or so. And he gets an opportunity tonight because David Savard can't go. That penalty that he takes as well, they go 5-on-3 on the power play. You talked about the ref giving 2 penalties at the same time, less than 2 minutes into the hockey game. It's not something you see all the time. And then Chicago scores on that power play. Tyler Bertuzzi really sets the tone for the game. And now all of a sudden the Canadiens, less than 4 minutes, and they're already behind the 8 ball and they're losing. But blown opportunity for Jaden Struble tonight.
I agree. Look, I know he's probably not the most comfortable playing on the right side. He's a left shot. He's probably better on the left side. But if he wants to play every day in this lineup, he's going to have to figure it out, because he's not playing ahead of Caden Gooley. He's not playing ahead of Jack Guy, and he's not playing ahead of Lane Hudson. And if the Canes really want to be, tough about it, they can move Matheson over to the left side too. So, no, he's going to have to figure it out. And if he doesn't figure it out, it's not going to be easy for him, 100%.
Yeah, so you know what? Not much has changed for the Montreal Canadiens, who are, Ottawa lost and the Canadiens lost. So the Canadiens are 3 points out of the second wild card spot. But once again, it's a blown opportunity because it's a game that they should have had, but obviously didn't. And now tomorrow versus Colorado. Pierre, I got to ask you, when I saw that Samuel Montembeault played Sunday, late afternoon, early evening in Tampa. And then he played Tuesday afternoon, late afternoon in Vegas. And then they were playing Chicago and Colorado. I said to myself, you know what? They'll give Dobesh Chicago. It'll give an extra day's rest for Montembeault, who just played 2. And Montembeault will play versus a stronger team. They chose to go in a different direction. They haven't yet named Dobesh as the starter tomorrow. I imagine he will. 2 games and 2 nights, travel included, plus altitude. And you have Vancouver at home where you're going to have to travel all day on Sunday to get home. So I would imagine that Montembeault will play that game versus the Canucks. So if I'm a betting man, I'm betting on Dobesh to play tomorrow. Are you at all surprised that Dobesh didn't go tonight and Montembeault tomorrow?
I think they probably had a feel internally. They probably talked about it as a staff. They probably talked to the player. They probably talked to the trainers. And they probably felt that, this gives us the best opportunity to win tonight. I think they probably realized what you've just talked about. Travel tonight, altitude tomorrow, a team that's coming off an emotional win in overtime against, obviously, Buffalo, where they had to come from behind. They're going to be tough, talking about Colorado. I think they knew that. They probably were thinking, you know what, if we get our best guy in there tonight in Chicago, we got a better chance to win. So they just rolled the dice. Maybe they got it wrong. But I don't think this is on Montembeault tonight, honestly, Tony. I just didn't like the way the team played in front of them. And I think there were enough mistakes made, especially starting out giving up a 5-on-3. You just can't – on the road in Chicago, and I've done so many games there. I've coached so many games there. It's even when the team's not good, it's still a very difficult environment to play in, especially playing from behind.
Yeah, Pierre, it's not all bad for the Montreal Canadiens. A couple of days ago, we gave credit to Josh Anderson, who has really taken a sense of professional and personal pride this year, more so than he did a year ago. And we said, okay, the execution isn't always there. The production isn't always there, but he's giving you an honest effort. He's taken on all comers. He took on Tom Wilson. He took up Jacob Trouba. He laid the sledgehammer, like you like to say, on both of them. I thought Anderson was good tonight. Once again, unfortunately for him, he wasn't able to execute, but he was making things happen, I found.
Oh, I agree. No, he gave you what he had in the tank. There were a lot of guys who like Mike Matheson. I don't know how many shots he had on goal. I know at one point he had 8 shots on net.
8, yeah.
Is that what it was? 8?
Yeah.
That's a career high for him. He had a good game. I thought Lane Hudson did some really good stuff in that game. I wish he'd shoot the puck more. Sometimes he's overpassing. But, no, I mean, there were a lot of guys that I thought Anderson was excellent. To your point, I thought he was very, very good in the game.
Yeah, no, I thought Josh Anderson was very good. Nick Suzuki is more physically engaged in the last 3 or 4 weeks. There wasn't any production tonight in terms of goals from him, but there was a goal by Cole Caulfield, and Suzuki did get the assist on the goal, and so did Mike Matheson. It went from Suzuki to Matheson to Caulfield. In tight, Pierre, he knows how to score. And for Cole Caulfield, who scored last week his 100th goal in the National Hockey League, here's a couple of stats tonight as well that were brought up on social media while the game was going on. Cole Caulfield becomes the first Canadiens player to record 4 consecutive 20-goal seasons since Max Pacioretty did it from 2013, 2014 to 2016, 2017. Pierre, Pacioretty was the Canadiens' top goal scorer for many, many years, having seasons of 30, 33, 35, 37, 39 goals. That's pretty elite company. That's a pretty cool stat.
Oh, yeah, no, that's really good. Plus, that's like a home game for Cole when you think about it.
Yes.
He had to play University of Wisconsin.
Correct, yes.
In the U.S. National Team Development Program. Probably had tons of friends and family there. So he's bringing the heat. I thought he played a really solid game. So I'm not trying to pick on Slaf, by the way. I don't want to.
Well, that's okay if you do. I mean, he didn't play well.
No, I don't like doing that because he's a kid still and he's learning. He's learning the rigors of the league. He really is. But you could see there were two guys on that line that were playing, and there was one guy that wasn't playing.
Yeah.
And that hurts them because they need that line going all the time, especially when you take Laine. I don't know how much we're going to talk about it, Tony, but you take Patrick Laine out of that lineup.
Yeah.
That hurts you, especially when Slafkovsky's not going.
You know what? I like the way you put it. You're a lot nicer to the players when they're not going than I am. And I appreciate everything you said, but getting to know the league shouldn't affect your compete level and your effort. Like Slaf was just he was a passenger tonight. Like he wasn't
here's
there.
So here's what happens. You play in Columbus, you lose. Tight game, but you lose. You got Christmas break. You're a kid. You go to Florida, you win the game, everybody's really excited. You go to Tampa, you win the game. You get on the plane, you fly to Vegas. Bright lights, big city. It's different. You're a kid now. You just remember that. You're not 25. You're a kid.
Yeah.
Then you go into Vegas and you win the game, and everybody gets fat, drunk, and stupid. And I mean that as just an expression. It's not what they did. And you go into Chicago. He's probably only been to Chicago twice in his life.
Yeah.
It's a different place to go. And all of a sudden you're in Chicago and let your guard down, and boom, you don't have it. And he didn't have it tonight. He just didn't have it.
Is there a better fourth line winger than Emil Heineman?
Well, there's a bunch of guys in the league that play as depth players that are good. This guy's really good. He might get 17, 18 goals this year. Tony, he's a good player.
Yeah.
And this is on the pro scouts. This is probably on Hughes and Gordon as well, getting that player. He's a very good player. He's very good.
The way he batted that puck out of midair. I mean, the eye hand.
Plus, he did it left-handed. Like you think about it.
Yeah.
He did it left-handed. Not that easy to do.
You just said he's a goal scorer. He's one of the Canadiens' best goal scorers. I mean, everyone knows that Liney's the most elite sniper they have, and Cole Caulfield is nothing to spit at. But when you start looking for their third best natural goal scorer, you make a case for Emil Heineman.
Well, you look at all the young kids in the league. I think Mishkov's got 10. Heineman's got 10. They're not a lot of young guys that got more than 10 goals in the league.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that right now.
And look, Nick Suzuki was their top goal scorer last year with 33 goals, and he obviously should be top 3 behind Liney and Caulfield. But once again, Heineman is a player who's surprising a lot of players. I have some stats that I want to throw your way, and we'll get to some questions for Pierre McGuire. You can bring them up, and Sammy and Yellow will. You can send them off, and Sammy and Yellow right now on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Twitter Live, and Sammy and Yellow will jot them down, and they'll bring them up. We'll also open up the phone lines and get to some of your phone calls at 1-888-585-SICK. That's 1-888-585-SICK. So got some numbers here. Tough night in the circle for Nick Suzuki. 5 of 15. 33% for Nick. And, we talked about that number one line, Suzuki, Caulfield, and Slafkovsky. They had the puck less tonight because they lost a lot of draws. 33%. Dvorak was good in the circle. There's no doubt about it. Heineman making the most of his 11 minutes and 32 seconds, Pierre. A goal, 5 shots. 5 shots in 11:32.
No, he played really well. He played really well.
You talked about it being a difficult night for Carey. I thought it was a difficult night for his defense partner, Caden Gooley, as well.
Yeah, Caden had a tough night. That tandem, which I think is going to be a real good tandem long term, they had a tough night, both of them.
We're going to get to your questions. If you are looking for the ultimate entertainment experience, Playground has it all. Gaming, poker, fine dining, live music, DJs, all with unmatched customer service. Why go anywhere else? Just minutes from downtown Montreal across the Mercier Bridge. Playground, your top destination for fun. And Yellow and Sammy, if you have any questions or phone calls at 1-888-585-SICK, 1-888-585-7425. This is your chance to jump on a line. Here's a question coming in from Conway Gritty, who sends us $5 in the process. Thank you. Pierre, I know you played hockey, football, and baseball at Hobart. Maybe Heineman should be on the second line. 10 goals as a rookie. Come on.
Well, that's what we just said. We just talked about his 10 goals. So I agree with you 100%. But again, he got some looks up there. But I think, do you want to mess up the line with Heineman, Evans, and Armia? I don't know. That's why I never number. That's why I'm not a big fan of numbering lines. You know, I think they can get some more ice time? The answer is yes, I do. I think they can get some more ice time.
Look, I think he should be rewarded at the same time. I think part of the reason why he scored the goals that he scored is that, he's playing with players that he obviously has chemistry with, but he's also going up against other teams' fourth lines and other teams' third defense pairings. And I think that helps him, right? If all of a sudden this guy goes up against other teams' second lines and their second defense pairing, he's probably not producing as much, even though he's playing with better players. Let's go to Jacob on the line. Hello, Jacob.
Hello. Hi, Tony. Hi, Pierre.
Hello, Jacob. You're on with Pierre McGuire. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, that was a tough game to watch for my TV. I mean, listen, it wasn't an awful game. There were some good stretches, especially the second period. But, people talk about, like, how they lacked finishing tonight, but I thought their defense, they made a lot of careless giveaways, and those are frustrating because it's almost like since they were playing against an inferior opponent, it's almost like they thought, like, oh, it's not a big deal to make some mistakes because, like, against Florida, Vegas, and Tampa, they limited them. Tonight it was very frustrating, and it was kind of discouraging in that sense. Even though the effort was there were some players that also were passengers. But tomorrow's going to be tough. But maybe considering when you look at their last 7 or 8 games, their record against the top teams are great. Their record against the weaker teams is average. So I hope that tomorrow and or the next stretch of games, if they play better opponents, they might be better served. I don't know about you guys, your thoughts, but
Pierre?
Well, no, Jacob made a really good point there. They're playing well against good teams. They let their guard down against some weaker teams. The one thing I'd say about Chicago tonight, I don't know how many people watch the Winter Classic that are watching you and I right now.
Yeah.
But I would tell you that Chicago wasn't really pleased with the way they played, losing to St. Louis the way they did at Wrigley Field. And they brought a much better effort tonight to start the game than Montreal did. There's no question about it. Are they as good a team on paper? No, they're not. They're not. They're just not. But they had more, as Tony said before, and I think it was a really valuable point. Foligno had a real good night for them. Maroon had a real good night for them. The guys that get down in the mud and roll around, they had good nights for him. Even Bertuzzi's one of those players.
Yeah.
Montreal didn't have that tonight. They just didn't have it.
Guys, I want to show you a picture taken before the game. Two brothers. This is pretty cool because one of them played his first game in the National Hockey League. And there you have it. Colton Dock. And the Chicago Blackhawks tweet out, not every day you make your NHL debut playing against your brother. But, Pierre, I want to talk to you about Kirby Dach, who had 3 goals in the last 3 games on the road. 2 of them were game winners, who got an assist tonight on Heineman's power play goal. But Kirby Dach, Pierre, he goes up against his former team, a team that gave up on him after, 3-4 seasons, after they drafted him 3rd overall. And he played 15 minutes and 22 seconds tonight. And he didn't have a shot on goal, Pierre.
Yeah, no. No, we know. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'll give you a Scotty Bowman line. Getting comfy and cozy is not a good way to go.
Yeah.
And I think he got a little comfy and a little cozy. So.
There was and I think it was the Foligno goal. It was the Foligno goal. The puck goes behind the net, and Caden Gooley and Dach are trying to get possession of the puck, and they lose it. And I think Dach is behind the net with Dickinson, who throws it to Kaiser, who passes it to Kaiser. Kaiser takes a shot, and it's redirected to Foligno. So Dach can't get possession of the puck. Him and Gooley are fighting it, and they lose it. And then Dickinson gets the pass to Kaiser, and Dach is just staying there behind the net, and then slowly he starts to go back to the front of the net, and he tries to get to Foligno, who redirects that pass. He doesn't get there in time, and Foligno scores. I talked to you about the 2 Vegas goals last game. Kirby Dach was on the ice for both of them. I know he scored the game-winning goal and he redeemed himself, but he was on the ice for both goals. And on both goals, he made some big mistakes. One was a turnover on the first goal, and one was not getting to his man, Noah Hannafin, at the point on the second goal. And tonight, there's a play where it's Chicago's second goal of the game that gives them a 2-1 lead. It was not a very good shift for Kirby Dach, Pierre.
No, but this is what we talked about before. Playing center in the NHL is tough. Defensively, you got a lot more responsibility than people think. Even if you want to say they're playing straight man-to-man, the wingers usually are the last two guys back in the zone. The center's usually the first guy back in the zone. So you got down-low coverage. He's made a lot of mistakes with down-low coverage. I would totally cede to that point. He's made a lot of mistakes with that.
All right. One Shot Marble says that's a pretty desperate reach, trying to blame Dach for that. I didn't say that I blame Kirby Dach. I simply explained the play that the puck goes behind the net and Gooley and Dach try and get a stick on it, and they can't. And then Gooley's on Dickinson, I believe, who gets it back to the point. And then Dach leaves behind the net and tries to tie up Foligno, and he can't get to him in time, and it's redirected. I mean, I didn't say I blamed it on him. I'm just just talking about the play. All right, okay.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about, though. Playing center's hard down low. People don't I think fans eventually realize, but it's a lot harder than you think. And that's why, especially at this time, you just can't let your guard down. And I think a lot of guys let their guard down tonight. And Kirby Dach's not the only one. I think a lot of guys did.
Stormin Norman agrees with you, by the way, and he says the Chicago Blackhawks played guilty tonight. You talked about the fact they were very disappointed with the outdoor game and the way they performed. He says they played guilty tonight. They clearly were ready for this game. Pierre, what did you think of Connor Bedard tonight?
He was adequate on the power play, 5-on-5. He wasn't very good.
I totally agree with you. I was look, I get it. He's doesn't have a great team in front of him. I expected a little bit of a better performance 5-on-5. Once again, you can tell that the power play revolves around him. They want to get him the puck, whether it's as the shooter or as the setup man. But 5-on-5, I thought it was difficult. It was difficult.
It was difficult for him.
Yeah.
The power play is totally geared for him, though. They got that whole thing wired for him.
I got Seth Jones in my pool, and he's just killing me this year.
Yeah. Well, he's been dealing with a lot of injury stuff.
Yes.
He's not 100%. I've known that player for a long time.
Yeah.
That's not nearly the same player. Not even close.
Not the player that was drafted 4th overall. You're right about that. Was it 4th overall that he was drafted, or? Yeah. It was 4th overall, correct. It was it was McKinnon, it was Barkov, it was Drouin, and it was Seth Jones. By the way, that defense core, they're huge. They're really big.
Vlasic is big, Kaiser is big, Jones is big. No, you're not wrong. They're big. Vlasic's really underrated. I watched him a ton play at Boston University. I saw him at the National Team Development Program. He's really going to be a very solid stay-at-home defender that can produce some points for you. You'll see in about 2 years, everybody's going to say, where'd this guy come from? He's going to be a really good player.
Are the Canadiens going to pick up points tomorrow night in Colorado? Go all the way with Betway and get a free bet up to $200. If your first bet loses, scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the details section to create an account and redeem your welcome offer. Offers only available for new customers. Terms and conditions apply. Offers not available in Ontario. Must be 18 years of age and older. Please play responsibly. We brought up a stat before that Cole Caulfield has become the first Montreal Canadian since Max Pacioretty to have 4 consecutive 20-plus goal seasons. He's also in company with Stéphane Richer. Can we bring up the other stat? Here you go. This one courtesy of Sportsnet Stats. First member of the Canadiens with 20 goals in each of his first full NHL seasons since Stéphane Richer in 85, 86 to 88, 89. So once again, it's not easy, folks, to score 20 goals in the National Hockey League. And Cole Caulfield has just done it in his first 4 seasons in the National Hockey League. That's pretty cool.
No, you got to give Mark Bergevin a lot of credit on that pick too. By the way, he deserves a lot of credit for that. I watched Cole a ton that year, and he was outstanding. The only question you had was his size, but then when he won the Hobey Baker at Wisconsin, you could see that season, his second season in Wisconsin, you could see there's something special going on there.
You know what? If I can add, I'd like to give Trevor Timmins and Shane Churla a lot of credit for that pick as well, Pierre, because the Canadiens had 3 players identified on their list that they were hoping would be available with pick number 15 once the draft was progressing, obviously, and they saw who was available. And when they got to about 11 or 12 and they started realizing who they thought could be available and who couldn't, of the 3 players, there were 2 of them that were on their list. And based on the information I have, the player that Marc Bergevin wanted but wasn't disappointed at all to get Caulfield was defenseman Cam York. And Cam York went 14 to the Philadelphia Flyers. And then when it came to 15, Trevor Timmins said, I like Caulfield. And Shane Churla says, I like Caulfield. He can score from anywhere. I say Caulfield. And Trevor Timmins looked over at Marc Bergevin and said Caulfield. And Bergevin said, sure. Because Bergevin was high on Caulfield as well, because he's represented by CAA and Pat Brisson. We know that Marc Bergevin and Pat Brisson obviously are friends from a very, very long time. And Brisson had said to Bergevin the night before the draft, when Bergevin asked to bring Cole Caulfield to supper, either the night before the draft or 2 nights before the draft, Pat Brisson said to Bergevin, why do you want to bring him to supper? He's going to go in the top 10. You're drafting 15. And they said, well, we want to bring him to supper anyway. And they brought him to supper, and they end up drafting him, Pierre. So credit to Marc Bergevin and Trevor Timmins and Shane Churla, the rest of the Canadian scouting staff for sure. Let's go to Jerry on the line. Jerry, you there?
I'm there, my friend.
Jerry in Longueuil, Happy New Year, my friend. How are you?
I'm fine, Tony. Happy New Year to you, too, Mr. McGuire, as well.
Hi, Jerry. Thank you.
So I have a comment and a question, if you allow me.
Go ahead. This is your show.
My comment's about Slafkovsky. I don't know if you remember, but the first time I called you on your podcast was after he scored his first goal. And some people reacted because he was too boisterous while, he was jumping in the air. And I said it's fun to see. And I find a lot of people are critical of the kid. But, yes, tonight wasn't a good game. But just to prove my point, he started the season with Suzuki and Caulfield. Then they took him off. Then they put Newhook there. And for 12 games, and Newhook got 1 point. That's it. Now they put back Slafkovsky. In his last 7 games, he has 6 points. And something we seem to neglect. Last year, he had 50 points, 30 assists for a kid. This year, Suzuki is the leading player on the team on the assist side. And guess who's second? Slafkovsky. And way ahead of everybody else, the other centerman on the team. So, he only has 4 goals, but he has 21 points. That would give him close to another 50-point season. So I think we're pretty harsh on him. And, in fact, I was wondering, next year we got Demidov coming. I don't know if you saw the goal he scored yesterday.
Yes, absolutely. It was unbelievable.
Unbelievable. I mean, that's NHL top elite goal. He's coming. He needs a centerman. And I'm sorry, Dak is not the solution, certainly not Newhook. I was wondering if Slafkovsky could play center if they can't get a second center, or they put Demidov at center, because you can't play the way he does and get 17 assists by luck. I mean, there's certain talent there. He fed Caulfield, I think it was against Florida, a perfect cross pass for him to get it. I think it was the 4th goal. So I was wondering, why not give him a shot, because he has the size, he can pass the puck, he can score, and I think he's, I'm not as negative as a lot of people are.
Pierre, if you'll, excuse me, Jerry, Pierre, if you'll allow me, I'd just love to tackle this one first, if you don't mind, and I'd love to hear what you have to say as well. When Juraj Slafkovsky was drafted, you heard Pierre McGuire on television talk about that he saw this player a lot with TPS Turku. And as the season progressed, he demanded the puck and he wanted the puck, and he was becoming a force, and he was a force in the Olympics, and he was a force at the World Championships, and he looked like a modern day power forward. And now all of a sudden, it's like we believe it's easy to play center in the National Hockey League when Pierre has talked about just how difficult it is. And we want to take him out of his comfort zone to put him in a position because he's got assists, and basically to put him in that position because the Canadiens probably need an upgrade at the center ice position. So instead of going out and getting one, you're kind of forcing him to another position. I'm not saying he can't do it, Jerry, but I don't like it. I don't like the idea, number one. And number two, if I can, number two, even though Slafkovsky has the points you say he has this year, and that's a fact, the times we're hard on Slafkovsky is when he doesn't come to play and his effort level is less than desirable and he shows a lot of lazy actions. You want to take that player and put him in a 200-foot role? Pierre, I don't see it, Pierre.
I personally don't like the idea, and I really think Jerry made a lot of good points, but I think taking him out of the wing position and taking him out of that potential power forward position, I don't think that's a good blend for him. And I will tell you this, Jerry, right now, I think you're really sensible, but I can't see that kid playing deep in his own zone. I think he's going to have a really tough time. If you put him at center, I don't see that being a good fit at all. I think he's got to be a board player. He's got to be a guy that dominates a puck in the cycle. He's got to be a guy that makes creative plays, but he's got to be a guy that gets to the net. And I don't see
I agree.
that.
I mean, I don't want to put him there, but I mean, if they can't get a second line centerman, we're sort of stuck.
Well, I know, but that's not his problem, Jerry. Like, you want to take him out of his comfort zone because they can't get a second line center. You know what I think will happen if you put him at center? He's going to spend the whole game thinking. That guy's just got to play.
Hey, my second question quickly. We're getting close to trade deadline, okay? And
March 7th.
How Canadians are. Some are sellers, some are buyers. Considering what Ottawa went through, they thought they were ready, and they gave up some assets to get Claude Giroux and to bring Cat and Chikrin, and that didn't work out. I mean, the Rangers went out and got Tarasenko and Patrick Kane. That didn't work out. Do you believe the Canadians are ready to do this, to go be buyers, or are we still in the selling mode because we're still, to me, rebuilding the team?
Well, I'll take this one quick. I think if you're within 5 points at March the 7th, I think you got to consider being a buyer. If you're more than 5 points out by that point, I don't think you want to be a buyer. You might take a player on, but unless you can make a deal, there's certain guys that are untouchable. Like, I wouldn't trade Owen Beck. I wouldn't trade Demidov. I wouldn't trade Mayu. I wouldn't trade Josh Fowler. I mean, Jacob Fowler. I mean, there's certain guys that are untouchable, but if you can make your team better at the deadline, then do it. But I wouldn't be in a rush to blow up my team to do that. If you're 5 points or less, you may want to go out and get a player. But if you're 5 or more out, I don't know if you want to do that, Tony. I just don't know.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, guys, have a good 2025. Take care.
Thanks, Jerry.
We'll talk to you soon. You know, Jerry gave examples of teams going out and getting players and they lay an egg in the playoffs, but you know, it's true that Tarasenko didn't work out with the Rangers when they got him, but he worked out with Florida last year. Well, it's pretty good. I mean, he wasn't, you know. He
was part of the team. Hey, you know, there's certain guys that fit. There are other guys that don't fit.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can tell you right now, I'm going to date myself. When we got Ronnie Francis and Alfie Samuelson and Grant Jennings, people actually said we lost the trade because we traded Jeff Parker, a kid from Michigan State that never played in the league. But that's how people judged the trade. We traded John Cullen, the late Zarley Zalapsky, and Jeff Parker to get Alfie Samuelson, Ronnie Francis, and Grant Jennings. Jennings, Samuelson, and Francis won 2 Stanley Cups. Zalapsky, Cullen were moved out of Hartford eventually, and Parker never played. So, you know, trades do work. It depends on how much, well, you know, both sides of the trade. You got to be really careful.
Yeah. Zarley Zalapsky, you're right, who left us way too early at age 49. I remember was a former Montreal Canadien as well, right? And Dave King wanted to take a page out of Barry Smith's book and play the left wing lock when he was assisting Alain Vigneault. Remember that, Pierre?
Oh, I was there for it all. I saw it all. You're absolutely right.
You can call it the left wing lock or the what was it, the 3 back, 2 front, or whatever you want to call it. But he was playing Juraj Slafkovsky as a left winger, was he not? Versus the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yep, in the playoff series, 100%.
Yeah. All right. Let's get back to the phone lines at 1-888-585-SICK, 1-888-585-7425. It is the Sick Podcast. I'm Marinaro, and along with Pierre McGuire, it is the McGuire Report. Who wants to speak with Pierre? We got Tony on the line. Hello, Tony.
Good evening, gentlemen. Happy New Year.
Likewise.
Thanks, Tony.
Love your show, Tony. And I love when you have Pierre on as well.
Thank you very much. I love it too.
Yeah. Question for Pierre. The Habs were in a good rhythm here with a healthy lineup, as we noticed on this road trip. But tonight, with a couple of individuals missing, they looked a little bit disorganized and a little bit in disarray. With injuries being part of hockey, do you think they have the depth to be in the mix?
I don't think right now they have the organizational depth. I think they will in a year. We talked about it, Tony, some of the players they have coming up through their system. I haven't even talked about Michael Hayes yet, who's another guy that I think they'll probably turn pro at the end of the year. Florian Jackie's evolving, Luke Tuck's evolving. They got a lot of guys coming. So right now, if you were to ask me, do they have enough depth to be a legitimate contender? I'd say no, they don't. Do I think they will? The answer is yes, I do. I think they will.
Okay, so for the rest of this year, they just don't have the depth to be in the mix.
Well, we saw it tonight. I think you would agree that the power play wasn't nearly as effective without Patrick Laine. And I think you saw when you had Struble and Jacki on together, they both took a penalty within the first 2 minutes of the game. If Savard's out there, I don't know if that happens. So it speaks to your question, which I think is a really appropriate one.
Yeah, totally understand. Thanks for your insights, Pierre. And
thank you, Tony.
You guys in 2025. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, there you have it. Let's go back to the phone lines, or we can take your questions. Oasis Beyond sends us $10. Pierre, if Laine scores 36 goals next year by March, do you trade him for a first-round pick?
Depends what number the pick is, but I would prefer to have the player. As long as he's healthy, I'd prefer to have the player. Depends on what he's going to want money-wise. That's a big question.
Yeah.
But if you can't get him signed, at some point you're going to have to move him.
Well, look, it all depends on where the Montreal Canadiens are once again in the standings, right? I mean, can you imagine, like, you're in a playoff spot come March and you trade Patrick Laine? Well, you're going to get obliterated in this market. You can't do that.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's a tough, but I think you got to be proactive and try to get him signed too. Find out what the marketplace actually is for him. Will he give you a little bit of a discount? I don't know where they're going to be at that point. Tony, the fans are very fortunate to have the internet now to watch what Demidov does, to watch what Hayes does. You can watch American Hockey League games if you want to. Back when you were a kid growing up, Tony, you couldn't watch those on TV. So it makes a difference. You can see what guys are doing now. And I think the fans are starting to get more and more comfortable with the depth charts of some of these organizations.
Pierre, I'm going to divert for just a second here, knowing, of course, that it is a Montreal Canadiens post-game show here after the Canadiens and the Blackhawks. So we won't take up too much time. But, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you your thoughts on Canada's early exit from the World Junior Tournament again versus Czechia by, yesterday, a 1-goal game. They're on the losing end the way they were 1 year ago. A lot was said about this roster that was missing out on a lot of top-tier talent that was ignored because they wanted to go with some role players to complete the team the way they wanted it. Your thoughts on Canada coming up short?
I was really disappointed. First of all, because of the fact it's in Canada. Second of all, because the last time it was in Ottawa was 2009. And that Canadian team was outstanding. It was coached by a professional guy in Pat Quinn, the late Pat Quinn. He was surrounded. David Cameron, who was obviously was the head coach of this team, was one of the assistants. Guy Boucher was another one of the assistants. They were running a 1-3-1 power play. John Tavares and Ryan Ellis and PK Subban took that World Junior over for Canada. They were outstanding. But if you look at it, Tony, from 1998 to 2004, that's 7 World Juniors. Canada didn't win a gold medal. They didn't mess around going into 05 because they knew they were going to have Crosby on that team, and they knew there was going to be a nuclear winner, no NHL. So a lot of the guys from the 03 draft were going to be part of that Team Canada. They didn't play politics. They didn't play nice. They went out and got the best coach they could get. They brought in Brent Sutter. They had Brent Sutter in 05 and 06. Vancouver shouldn't have won, but they did with a young team. Sutter kicked butt. One of his assistants was Pete DeBoer. Another one of his assistants, Craig Hartsburg. Hartsburg takes a team in 07 in Leksand, Sweden. That's Carey Price, Jonathan Taves, shootout against USA. They win gold. 08, they go into Pardubice, Czech Republic. Hartsburg coaches again. They win gold. 09, they go to Ottawa. Pat Quinn goes in. No political appointments. Hockey Canada is going to have to look in the mirror and say, how are we going to get over the hump? Because next year they go to Minnesota. And I don't think it's going to be that easy. Now, I know they can get 9 players back. I thought this was a team that could have been better, should have been better, but they never responded to the adversity of the Matthew Schaefer injury. They never did. And I don't know if that's on the coach. I don't know if that's on the internal leadership mechanism. But this team never responded to the adversity. And they could say all they want about how they were going to be more disciplined. I know when push came to shove in a deciding 1-and-out game, Tony, 5 penalties. 5 penalties. And one of them in the last 3 minutes of the game. Can't do that.
Pierre, how did they leave Beckett Seneca at home? Like, how does that happen? Like, that kid's unbelievable.
Tony, I don't know. But I can tell you that when mistakes are made with roster selection, people point them out. And I'll give you an example. In 1998, they went to Nagano with what they called was a ghost roster. They wanted power forwards, skilled forwards, checking forwards, moving defensemen, shut down. They had a ghost roster, they called it. It didn't work, Tony. It didn't work. They didn't win a medal. Didn't work.
No.
So what they did for 02, because I was there, Gretzky becomes the general manager, and he surrounds himself with guys he's really comfortable with. And Pat Quinn becomes the coach, and he surrounds himself with guys he's really comfortable with. And they get a team of really hard guys, and they win. They win going away. 02, they were really good. And then for whatever reason, they got away from it again in 06 in Torino. Yeah. But you know what? I was there for that too, and then I saw what they did for 10. And they got mean again in 10. I think they just got to stop the politics and just get back to being a hockey country.
I remember 98 like it was yesterday, of course. It was Nagano, and it was Mark Crawford, and it was the shootout versus the Czechs. And Wayne Gretzky doesn't have an opportunity to shoot, right? And that team, talking about some of the players, without pointing them out, but Shane Corson, Rob Zamner, Keith Primo, Trevor Linden.
It was a ghost roster. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And didn't work.
By the way, very disappointed with Berkeley Catton's World Juniors. For a player who put up the numbers that he did in the WHL and with the skill level that he has, disappointed with his tournament, Pierre.
There's a guy that you know really well who is really responsible for a lot of Team Canada success. And Blair McAsee's that guy. And, I know he's not working with Toronto anymore. He's a no-nonsense guy. I was there when he and Sutter were putting this thing together, and it was unbelievable. It was a well-oiled machine. I know that people, they're old. Old guys aren't bad, Old guys still know how to win.
Pierre, are you ready to say that there's a problem with Canadian hockey, or you're not ready to say that because there's a lot of talent that was left off this team, and there's a lot of talent that was still in the National Hockey League that could have played in this tournament?
Well, like I let's just say Macklin Celebrini's not playing in San Jose, and he's on the team. I mean, Connor
Bedard could have played there. Yeah,
could still be on the team. So I don't think there's a problem with Canadian hockey. Personally, I don't. What I think that has to get back to I told you, from 98 to 2004, they didn't win a gold medal. People forget that. It's convenient to forget. Bob Nicholson didn't mess around for 05. He knew we can't mess around. We got to win the gold. And they put together a murderer's row of players and a murderer's row of coaches and a murderer's row of player personnel people, and they dominated. Ovechkin didn't even finish the gold medal game, just for people to remember.
Yeah.
And it wasn't dirty play. It was just physical, hard, and it's the same game plan, Tony, and I can tell you, it's the same game plan that Mike Babcock implemented when they played the Russians in the quarterfinals in the 2010 Olympic Games in Vancouver. I called the games, and it was the same game. And the first hit of the game was Rick Nash on Sergei Gonchar, and he almost killed him. And that set the tempo for that whole one and out in the Olympics in 2010. And it all started in 2005 in Grand Forks, North Dakota.
Pierre, you know what? We'll get back to the Canadiens, but I'm sure a lot of people are happy to hear your opinion on what went wrong for Team Canada at the World Juniors. Let's get to one or two more calls and a couple of questions. We have Paul. Sure. Paul, thanks for calling the Habs post-game show right here on the Sick Podcast. I'm Marinaro. He's Pierre McGuire. Go ahead, Paul.
How are you guys doing?
We're doing extremely well. Thank you.
Good. You know what? I know earlier you guys were talking about we don't want to pile on number 20, who is only 20 years old. But tonight is, I don't know. To be honest with you guys, like it's not just the work ethic. It's he's on the wrong side of the puck a lot of times. Mm-hmm. He's 6'3", 225, 220. Sometimes he plays like he's 5'10", 155 pounds. My question to Pierre and for Tony, to be honest with you guys, is why does he have the luxury of playing on the number one line when he doesn't deserve it most of the times?
Well, I think it's a question of depth right now more than anything else, trying to find a fit, because there's certain times, and I think it was Jerry before that made the good point about his assist record, which is fair, moving the puck, whether it's to Cole Caulfield or whether it's to Nick Suzuki. But I would tell you right now, I'd love to have the opportunity just to watch him in practice, see how hard they're pushing him. He needs to move his feet. When he's not moving his feet, he plays small. He does.
Yeah. Well,
he's right. Paul's right.
I'd love to tackle this, though, Pierre, and that is, so we know that he's had inconsistent efforts, and we know that his compete level has been less than desirable on several occasions this season. This is what we also know, though. We also know that when he was with those two guys last year in the second half of the season, a chunk of his points that Jerry from Longueuil brought up came with those two guys, right? So that we know that. We also know this. Nick Suzuki is 5'11", and Cole Caulfield is 5'7", maybe 5'8". And Juraj Slafkovsky is probably a good 6'3.5". So he obviously adds some size to that line. Now, Anderson could add size too. I get it. Armia could add size too. But, take a look at everyone they've tried this year on that line. They tried Newhook. It didn't work. They tried Doc. It didn't work. Now they're trying Slafkovsky. Some nights it works. Some nights it doesn't. But once again, it worked last year in the second half. He's a big boy. And if they don't put Slafkovsky in the top six, you know what's going to happen, right? Well, then if he doesn't produce, a lot of people are going to say, wow, great way to develop your number one pick overall. You put him on a third line or a fourth line. I think they're trying to get him going. They're hoping that they can find some magic the way they did last year in the last 30 or 40 games.
And it doesn't mean it can't happen, but work habits matter. And one of the ways of making sure you're reliable every night, if you're not on the scoreboard, dominate the boards. Dominate on the forecheck.
Yeah.
Make yourself a presence. And tonight he was not a presence. He was
about a month ago, give or take, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. Juraj Slafkovsky admitted that Kent Hughes really let him have it at one point. Pulled him aside and really let him have it. Without being there, Pierre, what do you think that conversation sounded like?
I've been part of those. They probably weren't really, it wasn't probably very nice, to be honest. Probably challenged him a lot about his work habits, about his behavior, And I don't mean negative behavior, just behavior on the ice. You know, you got to, when you're a first over, whether you're a free agent or a first overall, it doesn't matter. You're wearing the Montreal Canadiens sweater. How do you compete? How do you carry yourself? How do you want to be seen? I know one coach who had a discussion with a star player once, and he ran the discussion by me before he did it with the player. And he said, "How do you think you're perceived around the league?" And the player said, "Well, as a winner." And the coach said to him, "How about if I told you that people don't even want to trade for you right now because they see you as a lazy guy that doesn't really want to compete? It's all about you." And the player was dumbfounded. But I'll tell you one thing, he never looked back again, and the guy took off and had an amazing career. Amazing career.
You know, in his case, they gave him a lot of money, right, and tied him up to a lot of years as well. And I guess it's easy to become complacent every now and then or become comfortable, right? So,
well, that's what we were talking about before. Like, you got to understand, he's 20 years old. And it's not like the old NHL where you'd go into these cities 2 and 3 and 4 times a year. You know, when the Canadiens go to Chicago, they go once a year. They go to Vegas, they go once a year. I get it.
Yeah.
You play them in the playoffs, you might, but it's different. It's a lot different. It's different. So he's a kid.
Without being there, is that something that can come up in the conversation between the GM and the player? If the player says, you know what, the GM gave it to me pretty good, is the contract and the term and stuff like that, is that something that could come up to say, hey, you know what, you competed last year and we gave you that contract and we gave you that money and we gave you that term, and are you sitting on the contract now? Can it go that far?
It could. I don't know if that's what happened. It could. I don't. The one thing I can tell you is a lot of coaches prefer not, and I know it was the management at this juncture, but a lot of coaches prefer not to know what their players make because they don't like to talk about money when they talk to the players. Every player is the same in their own eyes. How are you going to get them to the next level? And they don't use money as a weapon when they talk to the players. It's not the appropriate. A manager could, because he's a guy that negotiated the deal.
Pierre, we went for way over an hour here, which is pretty cool on this Friday night. I was happy to be with you. Tomorrow night, the Canadiens are in Colorado. What do you want to see, and what should we expect here?
I just want to see them start the game on time. I want to see them be physical on the forecheck. Make sure you have a plan for Nathan McKinnon. Make sure that you have a plan for how you're going to deal with Makar and Taves. Those two defensemen are really good for them. And more than anything else, play 5-on-5. You know, that's part of starting the game on time. If you put them on the power play, Buffalo found out last night, you just cannot allow them to have a lot of open ice. So the Canes have to have a plan. And if you have a plan going in there, you have a chance to survive. Buffalo had a pretty solid plan for good portions of that game last night. They just ran out of gas, and I think Colorado got ticked off, you know, when they had the goal that went in, the Zach Benson goal. If you haven't seen it, go watch it.
Yeah, I saw
Colorado got really ticked off at that one, and that kind of woke them up. But if you have a plan, shut down McKinnon or contain him. Have a plan for Taves and Makar, and make sure you start the game on time and play 5-on-5. You got a fighting chance.
And insulate your goalie and protect him, because don't forget, he's going to be playing his second NHL game tomorrow night.
Yep.
Well, it hasn't been confirmed. I haven't seen it been confirmed yet, but I think once again they play Vancouver Monday night in Montreal. Pierre,
that's going to be a tough game. That's a big turnaround.
What's going to happen with the Vancouver Canucks? What can you tell us about this whole dissension between Elias Pettersson and JT Miller?
I just hear the rumors, probably like you hear, but I know if there's one person that can straighten it out, Tony, it's Rick Tocchet. I totally trust Rick. I know Rick. I coached Rick. I have total respect for him. I don't know how or why this has happened. I think the other part of it, I said this to my broadcast partner, Jimmy Murphy, today on our eye test on the Sick Podcast Network, is the Sedins are there. The Sedins work for the Vancouver Canucks. And, you know, I'm just blown away that they're not more involved in this. And maybe they are, but they're class guys, boy. And if something's going on there behind the scenes, I'm shocked it hasn't been dealt with yet. I'm really surprised.
And especially if a Swede is in the middle of it, Pierre.
Well, yeah, that's part of it, but they're equal opportunity. The Sedins are equal opportunity. Ask Alex Burrows; he'll tell you. Like, he played wing with those guys. They're hard guys. Like, they're determined, hard guys. I don't get what's going on there because they had something special going on there for a long time, and I don't know why it's gone off the rails.
Is it safe to say that if it is an issue with both players and it can't be fixed, that the one that will go is the 31-year-old who will turn 32 in a couple of months, and that's JT Miller?
JT, I don't know. I would tell you if I knew. I don't know. I don't think it's fair for me to speculate on that either. But what I'd say is that if you're going to make a move, you're going to make a move that's going to be the best deal for the team. It's not going to be the best move for the player. It's going to be the best move for the team.
We're going to end with a tweet or basically a post on YouTube from Stormin Norman Marshall, who says, newsflash, guys, the Canadiens need Tyler Bertuzzi. That kind of player, Pierre, his cap hit is big, but he does go to the net and he does create some havoc. But Tyler Bertuzzi's got a cap hit of $5.5 million per year, Pierre, and he's in year 1 of 4. I don't think the Chicago Blackhawks are pressed to trade him. But what do you think of that player?
Oh, I like the player. I don't know if he's got an appetite to want to come to Canada.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, well, he wasn't. Remember what happened when he was in Detroit?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know about that. Athletically, could Montreal use him? Yes, they could. But I don't know if something like that happens. I haven't seen his name out there, but maybe it is. But players like that are valuable. There's no question. That was a heck of a goal he scored tonight.
It's been with a lot of teams, though, so far, eh? For a guy who's, he's 29, 5 or 6 years with Detroit, Boston, Toronto, Chicago, 3 teams last 3 years.
Yep, that's what I'm saying. You kind of have to be careful.
Okay, 2 more comments. I've been told. Conway Gritty, if I had $1 for every time I've heard Pierre say, I've seen him a ton at Boston College, I'd have enough to buy out Dvorak's contract. Much love.
Well,
He even set this $5.
Which guy are you talking about? Jacob Fowler, Ryan Leonard, Gabe Perreault, Michael Matheson? Which one are you talking about?
I think when you mentioned Kaiser.
The Kaiser played at Minnesota Duluth.
Oh, I think you said you saw him play a game versus Boston College, or anyway, maybe you didn't. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, no, Kaiser played at Minnesota Duluth.
All right, okay. One more. Charles Edward Morin says, could you give my pal Josh E. and PI a salute on tonight's podcast? Feverish Habs fan who has become a disciple of your podcast in 2024, and a shout out to all those who bleed bleu, blanc, rouge. Pierre, give a special hello to Josh and PEI.
Oh, Josh and PEI, I hope you're enjoying your time out there in a great place. I lived there for 6 months, long time ago, working with the Ottawa Senators farm team during an early lockout. I lived at the Prince Edward Hotel, and the late, great Doug Harvey's 2 sons own a restaurant there, and I used to go in there every night for dinner.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. It's called the Merchant Man Pub.
The Merchant Man Pub.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Pierre, thanks so much for joining me on this Friday night. We'll talk to you again next week, right after the Canadiens and the Vancouver Canucks on Monday.
You got it, Tony. Thank you. Have a great weekend, everybody. Happy New Year.
And there you have it. Special thanks to all of our sponsors. Of course, Energy Transportation Group is one. Bittt Tibi is another. Playground is another. And, of course, Betway is another. And Restaurant Vago for bringing you the McGuire Report. I want to give a special salute to Josh E. and PEI as well. Josh E., thanks for watching the Sick Podcast. I'm Marinaro, weeknights, Monday to Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern. And, of course, following every Montreal Canadiens hockey game, we bring you the Habs post-game edition of the Sick Podcast. We'll be back on Monday night following the Canadiens and the Vancouver Canucks. Until then, enjoy the Canadiens in Colorado tomorrow. And then we'll talk to you again, once again, on Monday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. Special thanks to Sammy Cavallaro and Agnello Cavallaro at Master Control. And once again, have a very happy and healthy 2025, everyone. Much love. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast. is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. La Vida TB, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.